Hello and welcome back to my hip hop CD rankings. This episode I'm going to go with Mr. Arf Arf himself. No, not Seal, DMX. It's supposed to be a dog. Right. So, DMX, big East Coast rapper from the late 90s, the early 2000s, not been quite so prolific for the last 15 years, kind of focused more on film work and caught up with some personal issues. Certainly when he first came around, it was one of the major rap artists of the time, and so it was worth going through the 7 albums to look at. Not 8, no matter what Wikipedia says. Redemption of the Beast is not an official album, it's unsanctioned, not including it. So I'm going to start number 7, Year of the Dog Again. Firstly, Year of the Dog Again. I think just Year of the Dog would have sufficed, but me being pedantic, perhaps a sign that things could have been cut from the album. This was 2006, sort of after a 3-year gap after announcing retirement and leaving Def Jam. This album was released on Sony and Columbia. It's his first album not to debut at number 1 on the Billboard 200. And I mean, this could be attributed to perhaps not lack of promotion in comparison to some of the other albums in his past. They only missed the top spot by a few hundred copies, but also people were kind of tiring of DMX by this point, and certainly going through this album, it's clear that he was trying to go with the past winning formula for the majority of it, but ended up just kind of going through the motions, bringing along guests such as Busta Rhymes, Jadakiss and Styles P to help through some of those moments. A lot of it is, serviceable club songs, street bangers, some more reflective stuff towards the end of the album. Blown Away, Goodbye, Life Be Our Song, helping pick up a little bit. A rapid fire collaboration with Kashmir, Walk These Dogs. Give 'Em What They Want, which is a very hard and aggressive Scott Storch street banger. There's some not so great songs in the middle, less said about the middling Dog Love and the downright awful Baby Mother, the better. And yeah, some decent songs on there, but I say when DMX spends a 2-minute tirade about people going through the studio and not giving him drugs, you kind of know how much you can expect from an album like this. So next, number 6, I'm going to go with 2012's Undisputed album, which I don't actually have a physical copy of, forgive me, but it's not much to say from the cover anyway, but just so you can see what it is. And this was 6 years after 2012. It's an independent release, so again, didn't top the Billboard charts, didn't even get into the top 10, didn't sell particularly well in comparison to some of the past projects, but kind of a more valiant attempt at a comeback, I'd say. It has more of an uplifting feel for quite a few of the songs that's not typical of a DMX project. I don't know whether this was the legal troubles he was going through, the influences of the gospel album that he didn't end up releasing, but there's only songs like I Get Scared, Slippin' Again, sequel to earlier track Slippin', Head Up, Have You Ever, and give it a more uplifting overall feel to the project. Dame Grease helps production with a lot of the songs. It kind of helps bring it centered in that DMX sound. There's the street bangers as well. Not much in the way of club songs, although there are a couple. There's the anti-club I Don't Dance with a great feature from Machine Gun Kelly. Works very well with DMX. They've made some nice collaborations together. got Frankenstein, which is a old school pumping track, and really gets it bumping. And the songs are generally short. A sign that DMX knew he didn't have as much to say as he had in the past. Lyrics are simple at best. There's a tendency for him to, when he's run out of lyrics, just ask rhetorical questions and then answer them, or be the person being asked not being able to answer, which has mixed effects. But other than that, it works well as an overall project and isn't too long, so it helps it move along through. So number 5, onto Def Jam now, and this is And Then There Was X, released in end of 1999. At this point, DMX was Def Jam's biggest artist, essentially. I mean, Jay-Z was kind of there as well as a big artist, but he was kind of more of a Rockefeller person. Rockefeller hadn't taken off quite so much yet. DMX was with the Rough Riders movement, which was huge at that point. So there was certainly a sense from the album to try and polish DMX up a little bit and make him more of a commercial artist, which, I mean, it was his best-selling album, so I guess it did help. It got him more onto the singles charts. And, the attempts at making him more commercially viable weren't that bad necessarily. Swiss Beats brings a huge party anthem with Party Up, one of his classic club tracks. Cisco really brings to life the otherwise kind of bland What These Bitches Want. There's some really strong hardcore songs on there as well. The opening tracks, One More Road to Cross and The Professional, later on with Don't You Ever. There's the posse track DXL with the Locks and Dragon, sort of a general typical posse track from DMX, and the Locks will generally get on the albums. The first half of the album is kind of a bit easier on the ear than the second half, which falls apart a little bit. But generally everything works reasonably well on there, or very well, depends on where you go on the tracks. Make a Move is on there, which is a remake of an older track before he was signed to Def Jam, with the same lyrics, just an updated beat. And it doesn't feel out of place on the album at all, so it just goes to show how well established DMX's sound was at that time. Production provided by the bulk of the Rough Riders camp, Swiss Beats, Dame Grease, PK, Killer Tracks. And despite its kind of commercial shine, it did work as an album, and there's enough that is worth listening to help you get through the album. So number 4 now, Grand Champ, the final Def Jam album, released 2003. The basis of the album was that it was going to be his final album, his retirement album, and so it goes. There's a lot of songs on the album, but they're kind of justified in the sense that this was going to be the last we were going to hear from DMX, so we wanted to put as many tracks into the project, as many collaborations on the project. So there's the Rough Riders collaboration with Styles P, Jadakiss, Chic Luge, all on separate tracks, not together. Eve outside collaborations with like Cameron, Monica. Lots of strong highlights on the album. Another big Swiss Beats club banger with Get It On The Floor. Untouchable is a big posse track with a lot of the Rough Riders crew. All bring in pretty strong verses along with X, in particular Infrared and Cross almost steal the song. The Rain, which is a nice reflective sort of anthem. There's Where the Hood At, which was not one of his strongest singles, but it was kind of the single to prove that he was back, he was still hardcore, he was still raw, he was still homophobic, but there's nothing on the album that really takes it down. 50 Cent turns up on the album as well. It was obviously a huge deal at that time, getting two of the biggest artists together. X Gonna Give It To You, one of his biggest songs, makes it as a bonus track. There's skits all over the album, which, one of the weak spots of a DMX project is often the skits. But you can get through them fairly easily. They don't take too much away from the album as a whole. And say the whole overriding sense that this was going to be the last project kind of helped steer the album through. And number 3, and for the Great Depression, 2001. So a bit of a break between the older projects and this one after doing some film work. Didn't quite get the best reception when it came, or certainly hasn't, in reflection, not had such a great reception, depending on, I guess, who you ask. I think it is one of the stronger projects, and it's certainly a very reflective project from DMX. Tracks like When I'm Nothing see him in reflecting on his fame. I Miss You, the dedication to his late grandmother. We see some new production on there in terms of producers, or people that weren't necessarily Rough Rider strongholds at that time, but Black Key, Kid Cold, DMX himself helps out with production, alongside the other general Rough Rider production team. Just Blaze turns up on there for not one of the best productions, but it's still there and helps bring a bit of a different flavour to it. Bloodline Anthem, which has really banging live guitars and drums, particularly towards the end of it. And throughout there's some very strong songs. Who We Be, Right Here. There are songs that kind of drag down a bit. Treat 'em Mo, Show It Was the Bomb. Treat 'em Mo kind of really just being notable for a couple of jabs at the Locks, and I think Ja Rule there's a mention there as well. Damien 3, which is kind of just there to close the Damien chapter. It's fine, but it's not the strongest of the songs. And I can understand that some of the weaker songs on there are pretty weak, but the strong songs on there are very strong in my opinion, so that helps keep the album up. Also, on this version there's several hidden tracks at the end, kind of collaborations with some of his Rough Rider and Bloodline artists. After the A Minute for Your Son track, which follows the prayer song. I was going to mention with Undisputed that the prayer track happens in the middle of the album. I was going to mention because generally on a DMX album you get a prayer skit and a sort of God song towards the end of the album, either the last track or the penultimate track. Whereas Undisputed decided to put it right in the middle, which I suppose helps break it up a little bit, but I'm still not quite sure why that decision was made, but it's, like I say, helps on that album a bit. But yeah, Great Depression, strong album I feel in terms of DMX's reflection and emotion. And number 2, Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood, very close between Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood and Great Depression actually, but I feel I had to go for this one just because it was in the 1998. It kind of led on a bit from the debut album, which obviously we're going to get to, so it came with a very similar style to the debut album. which, kind of made it a bit formulaic, I suppose. But when it was such a winning formula at the time, and DMX was so aggressive and passionate about it, it worked so well. Swiss Beats handles the majority of the production on this album. It was actually the only album he does handle the majority of the production, considering how big of a part Swiss Beats played in DMX and Rough Riders movement. It's strange to see that this is the only time. I suppose this helped establish Swiss as a rising producer at the time. Some of the production is kind of samey in that sense, and kind of goes with a lot of the general Swiss Beats production that he was using at that time, but it does kind of make the album more cohesive, and he does step out of his comfort zone from time to time, bringing in different instrumentation. The title track, Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood, brings in a saxophone for the outro, which is one of the most beautiful outros in hip-hop, I personally feel, with the saxophone riding out and then going out again to bring back the sort of dirty, thumping bass and synths. Ready to Meet Him, which is an extended track, has the prayer at the beginning of it and then the conversation with God throughout it, bringing an Asian influence along with some really gothic sounds. Marilyn Manson turns up on the album for The Omen, the second of the Damien tracks, which makes it even more haunting than it could have been. Mary J. Blige turns up on the album. The Lox appear a couple of times. Jay-Z's on there as well with the Lox, and Blackout, another big posse track between them. So some of the tracks don't work as well. There's moments where it kind of goes up and down and dips, but overall it kept the sounds largely of his debut, didn't steer too far away, more of a gothic sound, and brought some strong reflective moments on there. Slipping, of course, main highlight of the album, a big club track in the form of No Love For Me with Drag On. Very strong project, not quite as strong as It's Dark and Hell Is Hot debut album, also released in 1998, so only a few months before Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood. It just showed how much DMX was recording at the time, how hungry and passionate he was at that time to release projects, release songs. Dark certainly works well as an adjective for the album. A lot of the beats and content is very dark sounding, right from the beginning, with the eerie intro track, which kind of just has a haunting build until DMX just bursts through and attacks the track, followed by the Rough Riders anthem, which is one of his biggest songs to date. There's room for emotion on there as well, which helps DMX establish himself from the other artists of that kind of genre. Songs such as Look From My Eyes, Let Me Fly. There's the Convo, another one of the Conversation with God songs. Collaborations with a couple of posse tracks with the Lox and Mace on there, as well as some of his Rough Rider artists like Drag On and Casino and Loose. There's How's It Going Down, which is an affair song, and considering some of the other love songs that would come later in DMX's career, it holds up very strongly. Stop Being Greedy, which a track where he uses two voices to kind of showcase his more lighter side and his darker side, all while talking about the needs for robbing for survival, taking from people who have got much more than him and other people in his environment. Again, multiple voices used for the first Damien song on here, to showcase the difference between the conversation between himself and the devil, and the convo as well, showcasing the different voices. So again, use of voice to showcase different emotions, different styles, conversations between his different sides, as it were, to help offshoot some of a lot of the darker material. Because I mean, there is a lot of macabre stuff on here. I mean, more into that sort of horrorcore vein, with tracks like Damien, X is Coming. But I mean, the way that he attacks the songs, the way that he literally bursts through practically on most of his songs, just helps showcase the desperation, which justifies the depravity, for lack of a better term, on some of the songs. And this is what helps X stand out. He was a hardcore New York rap artist, but he managed to bring the emotion, he managed to bring the aggression, hunger, reflection as well, with his real life street stories. So all in all, it still stands up really well as a project today. I feel a classic hip hop album, one of the best hip hop debuts of all time, and that's where I stand with it. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you hopefully very soon for more.